Drop a comment telling me about your current financial situation to support prosperity and subscribe to my channel. I am counting on your help to spread this message of wealth. Hello, I'm Rabbi Michael Stone, and today I need to reveal a truth that financial institutions, banks, and even many investment consultants prefer to keep absolutely secret because it directly threatens their profits and control over your financial life. During my 40 years of studying and applying the ancient principles of Jewish prosperity, I discovered something extraordinary that will completely change the way you view your age and your financial possibilities. There is a specific age in life when people not only can, but have a nearly supernatural natural advantage to build real, lasting, and sustainable wealth. And that age is exactly between 45 and 65 years old, a period I call the golden window of Jewish prosperity. And today, I am going to prove to you that everything you have been led to believe about aging and money is a cruel and deliberate lie. If you are over 45 and feel that your financial opportunities are shrinking, that it is too late to start anything significant, that you must accept your retirement with resignation and conformity, I want you to know that you have been the victim of one of the greatest psychological manipulations in modern history, a narrative created specifically to keep you dependent, insecure, and submissive to a system that profits from your anxiety and financial despair. For decades, our society has built an absolutely cruel belief that after 45, the doors close, opportunities diminish, that you must be content with what you have achieved so far and hope it is sufficient until the end of your life. But this is not only false, it is diametrically opposed to the ancient Jewish wisdom that has always recognized precisely this age range as the moment of greatest potential for the accumulation of true and sustainable wealth. I have studied the sacred texts for decades and discovered something impressive. The Jewish tradition has always valued financial maturity far above youthful energy, constantly citing the concept of chochmah, which means wisdom, and which only fully develops after decades of real-life experience, when you have gone through enough situations to recognize patterns, avoid traps, and identify real opportunities amidst the noise and illusions that deceive the younger ones. The biblical Abraham only became truly prosperous after 75, Isaac built his greatest wealth in maturity, and Jacob accumulated his greatest fortunes precisely when he had the wisdom to apply correct strategies he had learned through decades of trial and error. But I will tell you something I discovered observing thousands of people over 4 decades of teaching. The problem that afflicts millions of people over 45 is not a lack of capacity. It is not a lack of opportunities. It is not that the market does not value experience. It is none of that which you were led to believe. The real problem is the diabolical social conditioning that has made them believe they are financially behind, creating a deadly vicious cycle of anxiety, hasty decisions based on fear, strategies completely inappropriate for their stage of life, and worse still, the desperate attempt to imitate the financial behaviors of 25-year-olds, which makes absolutely no sense for someone with decades of accumulated experience. I see mature, intelligent, experienced people humiliating themselves, trying to compete with young people in areas where they should be using their greatest advantage. The wisdom that only comes with time, the patience that only develops through experience, the capacity for refined analysis that only exists after you have seen enough to recognize true opportunities amidst the shiny illusions that seduce the inexperienced. Let me tell you about Martha, 52 years old, a retired teacher who spent 2 years considering herself too old to try anything new, accepting that her meager pension of $1,200 a month would be all she had for the rest of her life, feeling useless, disposable, watching the world pass by, while she could only see limitations where she should have been seeing extraordinary opportunities. Martha came to me early last year crying, saying she felt like dead weight in society, that she had nothing left to offer, that her 30 years of experience educating children was worthless in the modern technological world. I looked into her eyes and said something that completely changed her perspective. My daughter, you are not too old to start. You are finally mature enough to start correctly. What happened to Martha in the following 18 months was absolutely extraordinary, and will show you the real power you possess but cannot see because of the social conditioning that has blinded you to your own capabilities. Martha discovered that her 3 decades of experience in education, her natural patience developed dealing with hundreds of children over the years, her ability to explain complex concepts simply and understandably, her skills in organization, planning, and conflict management, all of that which she considered outdated was exactly what the educational consulting market was desperately seeking. Small business owners in the region needed someone to train their teams in communication. Private schools wanted consulting on pedagogical management. Parents of children with learning difficulties paid fortunes to find experienced professionals who really understood the subject, not fresh graduates with pretty theories, but zero practical experience. In 18 months, Martha transformed her 30 years of experience that she considered useless into a monthly income source that exceeded her pension by 300%, going from $1,200 to over $4,000 a month, working only 3 days a week, choosing her clients, defining her hours, being respected and valued for the wisdom she accumulated over decades. But Martha's transformation was not just financial, it was existential, spiritual, emotional. She told me recently, "Rabbi, I discovered that I wasn't too old to live. I was finally ready to live for real. And this happened because Martha understood a fundamental principle that I want you to comprehend today. At 45, you are not starting late. You are starting at the exact moment, in the perfect time, at the ideal age, to build real prosperity, based on solid foundations, rather than fleeting illusions. Your experience is not a limitation. It is your greatest treasure, your most valuable asset, your most powerful competitive advantage in a world where everyone is chasing quick strategies without understanding the fundamental principles that govern the creation of sustainable wealth." Robert, a 48-year-old accountant I met through a mutual friend, was absolutely desperate, thinking he would never be able to retire with dignity because he had lost his job at a multinational corporation during the pandemic and couldn't find another job in the same salary range, competing with young people who accepted much lower salaries and had the energy to work 12 hours a day without complaining. Robert came to me saying he felt obsolete, that his 2 decades of accounting experience were useless in the digital world, that he should accept any job that came along, even if it was for a third of what he earned before. But when I explained to Robert the Jewish principle of Maser Rishon applied to modern business, when I showed him how he could monetize his accounting expertise intelligently instead of begging for a job, his life changed direction completely. Robert discovered that he could offer specialized services to small business owners who cannot afford a full accounting firm, but desperately need professional financial guidance, creating multiple streams of passive income based on the knowledge he already possessed, but had never thought to transform into his own business. Today, 2 years later, Robert has not only recovered his previous income, but multiplied it, serving 15 small business owners who pay between $300 and $500 a month for personalized accounting consulting. In addition to offering an online course on financial management for micro businesses that generates an additional passive income of $2,000 a month. But most importantly, Robert told me that for the first time in his life he feels truly free, working with whom he wants, when he wants, being valued for the real knowledge he possesses, no longer being just another replaceable employee in a company that could discard him at any moment. Through these real stories of transformation, I want you to understand something fundamental. The age that many see as a limitation is actually the greatest asset you possess, because it represents decades of real experience, credibility built over time, a much more mature and balanced way of making financial decisions, and principally, the approach to what Jews call Zman Chochmah, the sacred time of wisdom, when finally you have enough discernment to distinguish real opportunities from shiny illusions that seduce the younger ones. The central concept I need to reveal to you now is Zeker Avot, the principle of the heritage of the ancestors applied to modern finances, which teaches something revolutionary that our savage capitalist society has made a point of hiding from you. Every person over 45 carries with them an invisible treasure of experiences, skills refined through decades of practice, specific knowledge that is only acquired by living through real situations, authentic human connections built over time, and a strategic way of thinking that constitutes your true capital, much more valuable and powerful than any amount of money a 25-year-old might have deposited in a bank account. In the ancient Jewish tradition, real wealth was always measured not just by what one possesses materially, but principally by what one is capable of generating through accumulated wisdom. experience transformed into discernment, the capacity to create sustainable value instead of quick and fleeting profits that characterize the immature and impatient financial mentality of modern youth. There is a sacred concept called Coach Ma'aseh, which refers to the power of realization that increases exponentially with age instead of decreasing as society wants you to believe, because this power does not depend on brute physical energy or mental processing speed, but rather on something much deeper and enduring: the ability to recognize patterns, to anticipate consequences, to make decisions based on real experience instead of academic theories, to build true relationships based on mutual trust instead of superficial connections motivated only by immediate interest. When you are 45 or older, you possess something no young person can buy, imitate, or accelerate through technology: decades of real life, of mistakes that turned into wisdom, of successes that taught principles, of relationships that created a network of trust and credibility that is literally impossible to build quickly. But our modern society has completely inverted this ancient logic, creating a sickly obsession with youth and speed that totally ignores the true process of building sustainable prosperity, leading entire generations of mature people to drastically underestimate their own financial potential, to feel inadequate, outdated, disposable, when in fact they are at the peak of their capabilities for creating real value. I have observed for decades this social tragedy where people in their 40s, 50s, 60s devalue themselves, accept salaries below what they deserve, avoid trying new projects for fear of not keeping up with the pace, when they should be taking advantage of the most productive period of their lives to transform all their accumulated experience into a source of growing and lasting prosperity. Let me reveal to you the rule of 45 that I discovered studying the patterns of prosperity in the Jewish tradition. People who turn 45 automatically enter a 20-year window from 45 to 65, where they can apply all their accumulated knowledge, experience, and wisdom in the creation of real wealth, a period in which they have the potential to financially surpass everything they achieved in the previous 2 decades, provided they understand and apply the correct principles instead of trying to imitate strategies inappropriate for their stage of life. This is not a pretty theory or empty motivation. It is a reality I observe constantly when mature people finally understand the real value they possess and stop trying to compete in areas where they are disadvantaged to focus exactly where they are unbeatable: experience, credibility, patience, analysis, deep relationships, and the capacity to create lasting solutions. Linda, 49 years old, worked for 25 years as an executive secretary in a logistics company, always efficient, organized, respected by colleagues, but earning a salary that barely covered her basic needs and never managing to save enough money to feel financially secure. When the company went through restructuring and offered a voluntary severance program, Linda was terrified, thinking that at 49 it would be impossible to find another job in the same field, especially competing with young people who mastered technologies she considered complicated and scary. Linda came to me through a mutual acquaintance, crying, saying she felt like a dinosaur in the job market, that she didn't know how to do anything besides being a secretary, that maybe she should accept any work that appeared, even if it meant earning much less than she was used to. I spent 2 hours talking to Linda about her professional experience, asking details about her daily work, her responsibilities, the problems she solved, the complex situations she had faced over the years, and we discovered something absolutely extraordinary that she couldn't see because she was looking only at her limitations instead of recognizing her unique talents. Linda wasn't just a secretary. She was a specialist in business organization, executive schedule management, corporate communication, conflict resolution, team coordination, event planning, client relations, document and process control, and principally, she had something no course can teach and no young person can have: the total trust of the executives she worked for, based on decades of demonstrated competence and proven loyalty. When I explained to Linda the concept of Ma'aser Kahila, the monetization of community wisdom, when I showed her how she could transform her 25 years of experience into specialized consulting for small business owners who cannot afford to hire a full-time executive secretary but desperately need someone experienced to organize their businesses, her life changed direction completely. Linda discovered that there are hundreds of small business owners in her city who would pay between $500 and $800 a month for just 2 days of weekly work on business organization, schedule management, document control, and client relations. Services that for her were simple and natural after decades of practice, but for these business owners represented the difference between chaos and organization, between losing money through disorganization and having real control over their businesses. In 12 months, Linda built a portfolio of 8 small companies that pay on average $600 a month for her services, totaling an income of nearly $5,000, working only 3 days a week, choosing her clients, defining her conditions, being valued and respected for the experience she possesses. But the most important thing was the emotional and spiritual transformation Linda experienced. She told me recently that for the first time in her life, she feels truly valuable, not out of pity or favor from anyone, but for the real value she offers, for the experience no one can take from her, for the trust she earned over decades of competent and honest work. David, 51 years old, a factory supervisor for 15 years, lost his job when the company closed its operations locally and transferred production overseas, seeking cheaper labor. David fell into a deep depression, thinking that at 51 it would be impossible to restart, especially considering that his experience in team management and factory processes had no value in the modern digital world. He spent 8 months sending resumes without success, burning through his savings, watching his self-esteem disappear day after day, until his wife convinced him to seek help because he was considering giving up completely on finding work and accepting an early and miserable retirement. When David came to me, I realized immediately that he was making the most common mistake of mature people, trying to compete for traditional jobs instead of monetizing his unique and valuable experience. I explained to David that his 15 years supervising teams, resolving conflicts, optimizing processes, controlling quality, managing deadlines and costs were not outdated experience, but rather specialized knowledge that was extremely valuable, knowledge that small and medium-sized companies in any sector would pay fortunes to access. David created an online course called Team Management in Practice, based on his real experiences, true cases he faced, solutions he developed over 15 years leading people in a high-pressure and high-productivity environment. David's course does not compete with academic theories or modern management methodologies. It offers something much more valuable: real experience, practical cases, tested solutions, strategies that work because they were applied in real situations by someone who actually faced the problems he is teaching how to solve. In 2 years, David's course has already been purchased by more than 1,200 people, generating a monthly passive income of over $3,000, in addition to opening doors for in-person consulting at regional companies that want to implement the methodologies he developed in practice. David discovered that his experience was not a limitation. It was his most powerful competitive differential in a market saturated with pretty theories but empty of real practical application. Now I need to teach you the specific strategies I developed over 4 decades working with mature people. Techniques adapted specifically for those 45 or older, methods that respect your unique characteristics instead of forcing you to imitate behaviors inappropriate for your stage of life. I will start with the revolutionary concept of Ma'aser Kehillah, the monetization of community wisdom, which is completely different from traditional income generation approaches because it recognizes that your greatest wealth lies not in what you own, but in what you know, in what you have experienced, in the problems you have already solved, and the solutions you developed over decades of real life. This principle teaches that every mature person is a bearer of unique knowledge that can be transformed into sustainable sources of income, provided they understand how to identify, organize, and present this wisdom in a way that other people recognize its value and are willing to pay for it. The first technique I want to teach is the hidden talent inventory, a systematic method to discover valuable skills you possess but never thought to monetize because you consider them normal or obvious after decades of practice. I want you to take a piece of paper and write 3 columns. In the first, list all the problems you have already solved in your professional life, from the simplest to the most complex. In the second column, describe exactly how you solved each problem. What was your method, your approach, your strategy? In the third column, Identify other people or companies that could be facing similar problems and would pay to learn your solutions. You will be impressed to discover how much valuable knowledge you possess that you consider basic only because you already master it completely, but which for other people represents exactly what they are looking for and cannot find. The second technique is value network mapping, a system to identify business opportunities in your personal and professional contacts that went unnoticed because you never analyzed your relationships through the perspective of creating mutual value. Make a list of everyone you know, from current and former, colleagues to neighbors, friends from church, parents of your children's friends, professionals you have hired, distant relatives, social media acquaintances, anyone with whom you have had some kind of relationship. For each name, note what that person's profession or area of activity is, what problems they likely face in their work, and how your knowledge and experience could help them solve these problems more efficiently. You will discover that you possess a network much more valuable than you imagined, and that many business opportunities are sleeping inside relationships that already exist and only need to be activated intelligently. I will now teach the method of modern shekalim for pricing specialized services, because one of the biggest mistakes mature people make is drastically undervaluing their knowledge, charging ridiculously low prices for high-quality services, destroying not only their own income, but devaluing the entire market of specialized knowledge. The fundamental rule is this: never price your time. Always price the result you deliver, the problem you solve, the value you create for those who hire your services. If you have 20 years of experience in a certain area, 1 hour of your work is worth much more than 1 hour of work from someone who is starting, not because you are faster, but because you avoid errors that cost time and money, apply already tested solutions, deliver superior results based on real experience. To calculate the fair price of your services, identify how much your client saves or earns when you solve their problem, and charge between 10 and 20% of that value as a fee. Let me explain the techniques of Tosafet Shabbat applied to business, which shows how to create more efficient and strategic work periods by leveraging your greater capacity for focus and lower impulsivity, allowing for greater gains with smarter effort instead of more intense effort. In the Jewish tradition, Tosafet Shabbat means adding to the Sabbath, dedicating extra time for preparation and reflection before sacred periods, and when we apply this concept to business, it means creating routines of planning and analysis that maximize productivity during active work time. Mature people have a natural advantage in this area because they have already lost the youthful illusion that working long hours is synonymous with productivity, and have naturally developed the capacity to distinguish between important activities and urgent but irrelevant activities. Establish a weekly ritual of 2 hours, preferably on Sunday afternoon, dedicated exclusively to planning the following week, reviewing the results of the previous week, and principally identifying which activities generate the most value and deserve your priority attention. During this sacred period of planning, ask yourself, which clients generate the most income with the least effort? What types of problems do you solve most easily? Which services can you increase the price of without losing quality? Which activities can you delegate or eliminate completely? This discipline of regular strategic reflection is something young people rarely manage to maintain, but which mature people do naturally when they understand their value and implement systems suitable for their stage of life. The concept of financial yovel reveals 7-year cycles for asset building that begin precisely at 45, transforming this age into the starting mark of the most productive period for wealth accumulation instead of the end of opportunities. In the Jewish tradition, the yovel happens every 50 years and represents a period of renewal, liberation, and restart, when debts are forgiven and properties return to their original owners. When we apply this concept to personal finance, we understand that at 45, you are starting your first cycle of financial yovel, a 7-year period to establish sources of income based on your accumulated experience and wisdom. The first cycle, from 45 to 52, is dedicated to the identification and development of your monetizable skills, creating your first alternative income sources, establishing your reputation in the market as a specialist in your area of expertise. The second cycle, from 52 to 59, focuses on the expansion and optimization of these income sources, development of systems that allow growing earnings with stable effort, creation of products or services that generate passive income based on the knowledge you already possess. The third cycle, from 59 to 66, is dedicated to the consolidation of your assets, transmission of knowledge through mentorship or teaching, and preparation for a prosperous retirement based on multiple sources of income that you created over the previous cycles. Each 7-year cycle has specific objectives and strategies suitable for your age and circumstances. Respecting the fact that mature people need different approaches than those used by young people, but offering possibilities for financial growth that are actually superior to those available to someone just starting their career. The secret is understanding that you are not competing with young people in energy or speed. You are competing in quality, experience, reliability, and the capacity to deliver superior results based on decades of practical knowledge. I will now teach practical exercises I developed specifically for people in your age group, starting with the ritual of financial wisdom, which should be practiced every Friday afternoon for 15 minutes, a moment dedicated to reviewing the financial week that passed, celebrating progress achieved however small, identifying lessons learned and missed opportunities, and principally, defining a specific action for the following week that brings you closer to your goals of financial independence. This simple but powerful ritual creates discipline, awareness, and progressive momentum that are fundamental for sustainable financial transformation. The second exercise is the Journal of Mature Opportunities, a notebook where you note daily situations you observed where your experience could have generated value for other people, problems you saw being solved inadequately due to lack of specialized knowledge, conversations where people mentioned difficulties you would know how to solve easily. This exercise develops your capacity to identify business opportunities in everyday situations, transforming your life experience into a radar to detect market needs that you can meet better than your less experienced competitors. The third exercise is the Meditation on Accumulated Value, practiced for 10 minutes before sleeping, a moment dedicated to remembering and valuing everything you have learned, overcome, and achieved throughout your life, transforming memories that could generate nostalgia or regret into clear awareness of the asset of experience and wisdom you possess. This practice develops genuine self-confidence based on real achievements, strengthens your perception of the value you offer to the market, and gradually eliminates the negative social conditioning that made you believe age is a limitation rather than a competitive advantage. We have reached the most profound and transformative moment of our teaching, where I need to reveal the most powerful spiritual truth I discovered in 40 years of studying Jewish financial wisdom, a revelation that goes beyond techniques and strategies to touch the core of your existence and completely transform your relationship with prosperity, age, and life purpose. During all these years guiding mature people, I discovered that the greatest barrier to prosperity after 45 is not lack of knowledge, is not lack of opportunities, is not physical age, but rather a deep spiritual wound that our cruel society has inflicted on millions of people. The belief that you no longer have the right to dream, to grow, to prosper, to be valued, to build something significant. This emotional wound is so deep that many do not even realize they carry it, but it manifests as premature resignation, accepting less than they deserve, fear of trying new things, a sense of uselessness, and principally, the self-destructive belief that it is too late for any real transformation in their life. I want you to understand something fundamental that will change your perspective forever. The Eternal did not create you to wither away in the second half of life, to accept financial crumbs, to be content with survival instead of prosperity, to become a burden on society instead of a continuous source of blessings and value. There is a sacred concept called Zeman Teshuvah, the time of return, which teaches that any moment in life can be a complete restart, a total transformation, a spiritual and material rebirth, but that this potential intensifies dramatically in maturity when you finally possess enough wisdom to make choices truly aligned with your divine purpose, instead of being moved only by youthful impulses or external social pressures. The ancient tradition recognizes that there are 3 distinct phases in financial life. The first, from 20 to 40, is the phase of learning through trial and error, where you make necessary mistakes, discover your natural abilities, build basic experience, but still do not possess enough discernment to make truly wise decisions. The second phase, from 40 to 60, is called Derek Chochma, the path of wisdom, where you finally can apply all accumulated knowledge to create sustainable prosperity based on solid foundations. The third phase, from 60 onwards, is Zaman Beracha, the time of blessing, where you enjoy the fruits of decades of wise decisions and still have energy and capacity to teach others and leave a significant legacy. The tragedy is that our modern society has made you believe that the second phase is the end rather than the peak. That at 45 you are declining when in fact you are finally reaching your maximum potential. Let me tell you about the moment that completely changed the life of Susan, 54 years old, divorced for 3 years, struggling to support 2 teenage children on a nurse's salary that barely covered the family's basic expenses. Susan came to me in a devastating emotional condition, saying she felt completely lost, that she didn't know how she was going to manage to pay for her children's college, that perhaps she would have to sell the house she fought so hard to acquire, that she felt like a total failure as a mother and as a woman. She wept uncontrollably as she told me, "Rabbi, I worked so hard, sacrificed so much, tried to do everything right, but it seems that the harder I try, the more difficult things get. Has the Eternal forgotten me? Do I not deserve to be prosperous?" In that moment, looking at that courageous woman who had faced a difficult divorce alone, raised 2 exemplary children, maintained a demanding job for decades, I saw not a failed person, but a warrior who simply did not recognize her own strength and value. I held Susan's hands and said something she had never heard in 54 years of life. "My daughter, you are not too old to prosper. You are finally mature enough to prosper for real. You have not failed. You have prepared. Every difficulty you faced, every sacrifice you made, every problem you solved, every tear you shed, all of that was not empty suffering. It was divine training for this exact moment of your life, when you finally possess all the qualities necessary to create the prosperity you always deserved, but never had enough wisdom to build adequately." Susan looked at me with a mixture of hope and disbelief, like someone who had given up dreaming and was being invited to believe again in the possibility of a better life. What happened to Susan in the following 18 months was absolutely miraculous and demonstrates the transforming power that is released when a mature person finally understands and accepts their real value. Susan discovered that her 28 years as a nurse, her experience caring for patients in critical situations, her natural ability to bring calm and comfort in moments of pain, her skill in communicating with families in crisis, all of that which she considered just her job, was actually a set of extremely rare competencies that had immense value in the home care market. Susan began offering specialized home nursing services on weekends, attending to families who needed professional care for elderly relatives or those in recovery, charging fair rates for her experience and specialization. The demand was so great that Susan quickly expanded her services, creating a small specialized home care agency, hiring other experienced nurses who were in the same situation as her, mature and competent women whom the traditional market considered disposable, but who were in fact exactly what struggling families were looking for. Experienced, reliable, empathetic professionals capable of offering not just medical technique, but genuine human presence in delicate moments. In 18 months, Susan multiplied her income by 4, hired 6 nurses, opened a small office, and more importantly still, completely recovered her self-esteem and life purpose. She told me recently, "Rabbi, I discovered that I wasn't too old to live. I was finally ready to live for real." Susan's transformation reveals something profound about the divine purpose for the second half of life. You are not here to just survive until you die. You are here to flourish in a way that is only possible when you have the wisdom and experience that come with maturity. Your age is not a limitation. It is your most powerful credential. Your scars are not signs of defeat. They are evidence of victories. Your experience is not heavy baggage. It is your most valuable treasure. Every mistake you made taught you something you cannot learn any other way. Every difficulty you overcame strengthened emotional muscles that younger people don't even know exist. Every relationship you built created a network of trust and credibility that is literally impossible to fake or accelerate. I want you to understand the concept of tikkun olam personal, the correction of the world through the realization of your unique potential. which teaches that you have a spiritual responsibility to prosper, to flourish, to become everything you are capable of being, because your prosperity is not just for your personal benefit, but contributes to the correction and elevation of the whole world. When you hide, when you diminish yourself, when you accept less than you deserve, when you waste your talents out of fear or insecurity, you are not being humble or modest. You are being selfish because you are depriving the world of everything you could offer. The Eternal needs you prosperous, fulfilled, confident, creating value, solving problems, teaching others, being a living example that life can be good at any age. I want you to make a commitment to me and to yourself right now. For the next 40 days, you will daily practice the exercise I call the Declaration of Mature Prosperity. Every morning, before starting your activities, you will stand before a mirror, look into your own eyes, and declare aloud, I have the divine right to prosper at any age. My experience is my greatest treasure. My maturity is my most powerful advantage. I deserve financial abundance, professional respect, and personal fulfillment. I am not too old to dream. I am finally mature enough to achieve. Repeat these words with conviction until they become part of your identity, until you truly believe that you have value, that you deserve prosperity, that your age is a blessing and not a curse. Starting today, I want you to look at each day as an opportunity to apply decades of experience in creating value for yourself and for others. Stop comparing yourself to young people and start valuing your unique characteristics. Stop trying to compete in energy and start competing in wisdom. Stop hiding your age and start using your experience as your main selling point. Stop accepting crumbs and start charging for the real value you offer. Stop feeling disposable and start seeing yourself as irreplaceable. Always remember, your cup needs to be full first so that the overflow can nourish other plants. You are not being selfish by seeking prosperity. You are being obedient to the divine call to flourish and bear fruit. The Eternal does not want your self-destructive sacrifice. He wants your full realization. May you be blessed with the courage to recognize your value, the wisdom to apply your experience, and the faith that your best days are still ahead. Because when you finally understand that age is wisdom and experience is treasure, you discover that at 45 you are not finishing. You are finally starting to live for real. May it be so, and may your prosperity be a blessing for many generations. Amen.